Good afternoon. This is day 118 of Ukrainian resistance. My name is Vasyl Samokhvalov. Our next briefing is about the missile strikes on Odesa. Our guest today is Serhii Bratchuk, spokesperson for the head of Odesa Oblast military administration. Glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. The last 24 hours was noted with military events. There was some information about Zmyiny Island, about the Boyko turrets. There was also information that it was the act of revenge to Odessa for destroying Boyko's turrets, Boyko's towers. Last 24 hours, we didn't have air raid sirens. There were no air raids or air strikes last night. Hopefully, we won't have any in the following 24 hours. But I want to assure you that Odessa and Odessa region is under constant threat of the missile strikes and rocket strikes of our army, of the Russian army. 9 missiles hit Odessa. Several neighborhoods suffered, and the city of Odessa as well. Besides the ruined food warehouse that was completely destroyed because of fire, there was one person who died. There was security guard of this warehouse. Another missile hit cemetery, urban cemetery, so which means that the Russians are fighting not only with the living Ukrainians, but also with the dead, deceased Ukrainians. So that's probably the revenge. But I would say that it could be the reality of war, the reality of military times. Let's not talk about revenge, because the armed forces of Ukraine are not only protecting, defending our homeland, but they are also doing the counterattacks, military operations of preventive character. So if we look back, whether someone is going to open fire upon us. So this is not the right position. Speaking about Boykot's towers and the Zmyiny Island, I think we, as all law-obedient people of our country, we have to take care of information hygiene, and we have to only use the reliable sources of presented by our leadership and our military. You're talking about Boykos oil towers. One of the platforms is named Tavrida, as far as I remember. And I remember when the Russian warship Moskva caught fire and drowned eventually. I believe that something that had been stolen from Ukraine also has the right to drown. Ukraine has all the grounds to hit those objects. We are now waiting for official confirmation of this information. Russia organized small garrisons, so they put their AA systems, radio location systems, intelligence systems. These platforms were not oil derricks, so they were converted into military stations of intelligence character, and they were trying to control northwest territory of the Black Sea. The fleet of the Russian Federation unfortunately still dominates in the Black Sea, and I know that neither Ukraine nor our allies are ready to tolerate that. Therefore, Ukraine had all the grounds to act proactively and destroy such floating platforms. Let's wait for official confirmation, and let's express our gratitude to the armed forces of Ukraine. The most important thing is that we should not hinder their work. They know what they are doing because this is the military operation. And speaking of Zmyny Island, we also wait for official confirmation. Russians are trying to convert this island today into something that could be the analog of Warship Moscow. So they place AA systems, MLRS systems, radio location intelligence systems, and Harrison. So, but I believe that this garrison, which is based in Zmyny Island, is there temporarily. In Odessa, we say that the spirit of the owner of this island is up in the air and it's waiting for the right moment. Did the behavior of Russian fleet change recently? And if yes, do you have any theory, any explanation for that? The armed forces of Ukraine that are defending Odessa and Odessa region, they use a very humble formulation in order to describe the acts of Russian army. So this is they are trying to resist and they are trying to use mitigation measures. Russian fleet and their groups are constantly maneuvering and they are regrouping in the Black Sea aquatorium, and they cannot approach any closer to the line that they approached in April and May because they suffered losses back then. They suffered the loss of Moskva warship and Vasily Bern warship. Therefore, they do not dare approach close enough. The distance is longer, which is a positive achievement to us. The military are talking about 80 to 100 kilometers. I hope that actions of the armed forces of Ukraine who keep the situation under control and take the right decisions, so they will make sure that the system of defense is getting more effective, and we are using all the necessary means in order to defend our motherland. I'm not talking about a quieter situation, but maybe a more confident situation. The tactics of our adversary is to use as many missiles as possible. I read the information that in the north of Odessa, the boats are being loaded and they can enter the aquatorium of Dnipro River. Such vessels are used in order to tow different water obstacles. When we are talking about the front line of Ukraine, and these are hundreds of kilometers, we know that our adversary are trying to attack our positions, and there are certain water arterium that they have to overcome. I just hope that our adversaries do not need the platforms that they have put in the aquatorium of the Black Sea. Should they try to use it, those platforms will be destroyed. On the side note, speaking of blocking the grain export, yesterday we read the information from the Hungarian government. Even they are ready to become the guarantor of grain export to EU countries. What are the updates from Odessa? We call that grain corridors when we are talking about grain corridors. So we have to remember that this is military scenario. We need to unblock Odessa port, and Ukraine as a civilized country has international commitments to other countries, and we need to make sure the commitments are met. I'm proud of my country. I'm proud of the armed force of Ukraine. I'm proud that we keep our word even in the conditions of super aggressive hostilities. Ukraine is interested in exporting the grain, because soon we are expecting the new crops, and Odesa was one of the first regions that started sowing season, and the grain that has to be exported should be exported to the northern Africa and the Asian countries. When we are talking about military political scenario, so there should be clear political guarantees of our allies and partners. There has to be military component, such as, for example, accompanying this cargo and cargo vessels by the military vessels. We know that Ukraine has scattered a lot of mines. Between 400 to 600 mines are in the Black Sea. These are official figures. We know that these figures were disclosed in March, April, and those mines are close to Odessa shore. I hope that Ukraine should be the country that should say the last word, and the grain should be exported to where it has to be exported. There must be some Trojan horse that is present in the equatorium of Black Sea that belongs to the Trojan cord that belongs to the Russian Federation, who will try to penetrate into our equatorium. But we always keep saying this phrase, welcome to hell. No Trojan horse is possible in the equatorium of our Black Sea. Russia has created mechanisms for artificial food genocide. I'm not talking about crisis, I'm talking about food genocide. That's why the whole world has to stand with Ukraine and help Ukraine export the grain to its destination. My last question for you, the logistic issues of 3 regions that are cut off because of the attacks. How do you resolve logistical issues? There is one issue, but it's not only peculiar to those 3 regions or the 3 districts that you mentioned. This is the problem for the whole world, and the problem's name is Russian Federation. Speaking of logistics, when we are talking about the needs of our population, thanks God, people have the food, people have the essentials. There were certain problems with the gas supplies, and I believe these problems were Ukraine-wide. We understand that these are the difficulties related to war. People are ready to tolerate the difficulties, grin and bear it. Speaking of logistics, we have already worked on alternative corridors, including transport corridors. Odessa region has everything. Odessa is one of humanitarian hubs for the whole country, where we are transporting aid and relief using good neighborhood program, and this is not only military partnership but also economic partnership and social partnership. So we are all working in order to protect our homeland and in order to win this war. Our guest was Serhii Bratchuk, spokesperson for the head of Odesa Oblast military administration. We were talking about the situation